Hello YouTubers, HoganFan924, doing my first Mosin Nagant 9130 rifle review. These are four that I have that I purchased and restored within the last year. They were, my interest in these was really inspired by Iraq Vet 8888 Eric at Moss Pond, who has done a series of Mosin Nagant videos, including restoration videos and some firing videos. So thanks to him, Barry, Chad, and Ray at Moss Pond for those wonderful videos about how to restore these rifles. They really piqued my interest, and that's what inspired me to do these. So I've done these all within the last year. Hopefully I'll make it down to Georgia and Moss Pond maybe later this year and can bring a couple of these down with me to show the guys. I'd be really honored if they would take a look at them. So I've completely gone through everything on these rifles. Completely stripped them down, refinished the stocks, reblued everything that needed rebluing, did the trigger jobs, worked the bolts to clean up, the bolts to smooth them out, did all of the, the chamber polishing and everything else that Eric recommended. On a couple of them I did cut the firing pin springs, about a coil and a half, to lighten up the effort, the opening effort. These are a cock-on open design, which the important part that I that I learned from my own experience, it's probably going to be hard to see this, but there's these camming ramps. This is on the bolt body, and then there's one underneath here you can't see since it's open now, on the cocking piece, that slide against each other as this bolt is opened up, and that is what pulls the firing pin spring back and cocks that open. It's here on a detent that it's held open, and then as you slide it forward and drop it, there's a tab on the bottom of the cocking piece that engages the sear so that it holds it open, and that's what puts it in the cock position. So I did a ton of research. There are a bunch of helpful YouTube videos on how to lighten up trigger pulls, how to smooth out the bolts. What I learned was that you can, in those little camming ramp areas, what you can do is you can try using, if they're really stuck, you can try using lapping compound, the finest that you can get, although that gets very rough to open them up with lapping compound. So I learned that lesson, and what I did was I moved on to using automotive polishing compound, like what you use to polish the exterior of a vehicle, the paint job on a vehicle, like the 3M Perfected polishing compound. I would actually dab some in that camming ramp, and I would take the trigger out so that I wouldn't have to decock every time or pull the trigger, and I would cycle the bolt about 1,000 times, and that seemed to polish up the area well enough that then when I cleaned it up and greased those camming ramps with a good Teflon grease, that the effort was tremendously reduced on all these bolts. So they all operate very smoothly now. I haven't checked them with a hot fired cartridge, especially the lacquer finished ones, to see if those are sticky or not. But just dry, without firing them, they operate very smoothly now. Where a couple of these were hard to even open when I first got them without ever firing them. So this first one that I restored is a 1940 Tula, the very first one I purchased. It does have a wartime stock. You can tell it doesn't have the escutcheon on the rear, and it just has the simple tab type escutcheon in the front. It's like a little bent tab. There's not much there. And I completely stripped this down. I was a little bit worried about trying to take out the crossbolt. So on this particular rifle, it's the only one where I did not remove the crossbolt. I cleaned everything up. I reblued everything, polished up the bolt. I pillar bedded it and glass bedded it with JB Weld that worked really well. As a release agent, I would highly suggest like an automotive wax, like turtle wax, like the paste stuff. All and Eric has videos on that are very helpful. But that's the best stuff I found for a release agent with JB Weld. Uh, the second rifle that I did is also a Tula. It's a 1939 Tula, and I did a little bit different finish on the stock on this one. All these stocks I finished with True Oil first, and then with a product called Armor Seal, ARM-R-Seal from General Finishes. You can look it up on their website to find dealers for it. It's not that commonly available. It's not something you're going to pick up at Lowe's or Home Depot typically. But it's a beautiful finish. It's a wipe-on oil and polyurethane mix. The problem is that you cannot put that finish on first without putting on the True Oil. And the reason for that is that no matter what you do to get the cosmoline out of the wood, you cannot get all the cosmoline leached out of this wood no matter what you do. And if you try to put a polyurethane on prior to True Oil, you're going to have spots that won't dry. I had a couple spots on this stock that would not dry. And I mean, I baked this stock for days and days and days in the oven, and I would wipe it down. I would bake it for hours. I would wipe it down over and over again, and it would keep leaching out of a couple little areas here, especially in the tang area here, and a little spot on the side here, and a spot right back in here, and those areas would not dry. So I was at my wit's end after a month of working on this stock refinish. I decided to try True Oil, and sure enough, the True Oil dried, and I was home free. I put a couple 3 coats of True Oil, following the instructions, and then I switched over to the Armor Seal. The Armor Seal gives a very, very satiny, smooth feeling finish, while the True Oil has sort of a tacky feel to it, even when it's dry. This Armor Seal has the smoothest, satiny finish. It just feels incredible, and I love it. So that's what I finished with. Both these first two, actually the first 3, I used Minwax gunstock, the gunstock stain, and then the last one I did, which I built into a PU sniper, I used the red mahogany 225 and RIT dye, the regular RIT dye that you use on clothes. It's a Bordeaux color, which is like a wine color, because it wasn't quite red enough for my taste. I wanted a little bit more red in the finish, so I started on that one with the red mahogany 225. I did 1 coat of that, and then 1 coat of the Bordeaux RIT dye. The second rifle here that I did, this Tula, I converted it to a scout sniper configuration. It's very easy to do. These the rear sight base has an 11mm dovetail underneath it. You can knock out the original rear sight, knock it out toward the muzzle. There are 2 pins, as you can see on this one. There's a pin here and a pin there that hold it in. You got to knock those pins out with a drift. You got to drift them out, and a lot of these are also soldered in. This one was soldered in, so I had to heat it up before I knocked it out. Heat it up just enough to soften up the silver solder, and then knock it out. And then you got to clean up the silver solder that's left on here. You got to file it down, or use some steel wool or some sandpaper to get the last little bit of solder that's kind of left sticking to the finish of the dovetail. And then I bought this Leapers offset mount. It's made for a 22 rimfire configuration. You can buy them on Amazon. I think it was about $12. And an NC Star 4-power pistol scope. And I just love how this setup works. It just shoulders perfectly with your eye alignment. And it's real easy, to use with both eyes open. So I really like the setup on this. The third rifle I did here is the first Ijevsk that I bought. And this is kind of a interesting rifle in that it is a hex receiver, but it is dated 1942. Well, they didn't technically make hex receivers after, I think, 1938, and or maybe 36. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But there have been a lot of cases reported just like this one, where probably the Izhevsk Armory had some old hex receivers left over during the middle of the war, and they barreled them and built them up, um, as hexes. Or possibly it was re-arsenaled after the war, and it had a bad barrel, and they replaced the barrel with a later barrel on an earlier receiver. Unfortunately, I couldn't pick up a date off the bottom of the tang on this one because the machining under the tang is so rough that it's hard to pick up the date. I might be able to look at it with a microscope and figure out what the date of the receiver actually is, but haven't been able to determine that yet. Um, and then the final rifle that I just completed, it's actually not fully completed. The one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't polished the bolt on this, which I intend to do, but I haven't gotten around to yet. I just literally just completed this a couple days ago. I just got the bolt back from a fellow in Utah that does bent bolt conversions for only $30. Advertises on eBay. It is a welded bent bolt. It is a 3/8 diameter, so it's just like the original configuration sniper bent bolts, and he does a pretty good job on those. And I'm really happy with the way that this one came out. The scope itself is a reproduction Ukrainian-built scope to the original specifications, which I'm very, very pleased with. It has the the configuration where the three-post reticle will actually move within the field of view when you change the elevation and the windage on it. You're actually moving the reticle itself. So taking a look at it from the other side here, let's put that in there. Taking a look at it from the other side here, you can see I did all the stock work on this. I hand cut the the relief cut for the mount base, and I think I did a really nice job on that. It's actually looks better than most of the originals do. It's a little tighter cut to the base. I mounted the I drilled and tapped the holes myself. I got the original screws from AccuMounts. They're the fine thread 6mm by 0.75s. So I drilled those, tapped them, knocked it in place. I've roughly bore sighted it. It looks like the rear of the base is going to need to be shimmed, but I'll have to go out and fire it to be certain of that. I do have some shims pre-cut for when I get out there and test it, hopefully in the next couple months when the weather clears and the outdoor range is a little bit more usable out here in Michigan. But very, very pleased with how this came out. It's it just looks beautiful. All these really function beautifully. My trigger pulls are all between, believe it or not, they're all between about 2.1 and 3 pounds. I have this, I did purchase this Wheeler gauge, and I have tested all these trigger pulls, and they're all in that 2.1 to 3 pound range. I can kind of demonstrate that real quick on one of these. The first rifle and the sniper rifle that I built, the PU Sniper, actually have replacement finish sear springs that are purchased from C&R Spring. They do advertise on eBay, and they also have a website. And they're high quality product, but there are some dimensional differences with the finished sear spring, which actually I think makes it. So this is cocked, you can see, and I'm going to try to see if I can get the gauge here to show. We can see what it's at. Pull this. Let's check that. So this one's just under 3 pounds. It's about 2.8 to 2.9 pounds. And that's one with the C&R spring. The two middle ones are right around 3 pounds, and those kind of have the two-stage setup with the standard Russian sear spring, but with the I included a take-up spring that I actually got from these little chip clips, this style of chip clip that I was able to buy 5 of these for $1. You can see the spring in there. It actually works really well as a take-up spring on these. Got those at the dollar store. The last one, the sniper version here, I also used a CNR spring. I've got the trigger pull on that down to about 2.1 pounds. It may be a little bit too light, but it's not that hard to do. And I want to say all of these, even though the trigger pulls are all 3 pounds or less, they all have full sear engagement. They are all slam fire proofed. Because they do have full sear engagement, they are safe, even though the pulls are light. As you all probably know, these rifles don't really have much of an effective safety. So you do have to be careful when you drop those trigger pull efforts that low. Anyway, I may follow this up with some more detailed functional videos in terms of how I actually went about doing some of the specifics, like breaking in, lapping in the bolt action to lighten up the bolt efforts and lightening up the trigger pulls. I may not, because of liability concerns. I don't want anybody trying to do home gunsmithing that doesn't know what they're doing. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm not a gunsmith. But part of my training in mechanical engineering is obviously related, and a lot of that involves looking at an existing mechanical product and figuring out ways to make it function better and improve function. And I think that's what I've done on these. So looking forward to getting all these out to the range and firing them. Thanks again to Eric and the Moss Pond crew for your inspiration. Hopefully I'll have a chance to show you a couple of these rifles sometime down the road. Thanks, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to post them down below. I'll include some links to some other videos that were helpful in my learning about these rifles. I did do a lot of online research before I dug into these and started doing all the restoration work on them. Thanks again, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.